Welcome to Module 2 of the Techscope online tutorial. In this module, we will provide an overview of the 4 evaluation parameters upon which the Techscope is based: the solar water heating support framework, national conditions, financing, and the business climate. Each of the parameters is composed of indicators that require different calculation methods. There are 18 indicators in total, each of which uses different specific scoring methodologies and weighting. As discussed in the previous module, the weights and scores were developed through in-depth research and consultation with an international panel of solar water heating experts. The goal of this module is to explain each of the indicators and where the information for each of the indicators can be found. The Techscope was designed to use readily available information from public sources to the maximum extent possible. We begin with parameter 1, the solar water heating support framework, which relates to the policies and programs in place to support solar water heating market development. The support framework has a weight of 29% of the total score, which reflects the importance of targeted government support for solar water heating market development. Parameter 1 is composed of 5 indicators: solar water heating targets, financial incentives for system installation, solar water heating loan programs, building mandates, and outreach campaigns. Although there are many other specific types of support policy options, these 5 were chosen for scoring purposes following benchmarking of the policy components of successful markets around the world. A binary score of 0 or 5 is assigned to each of the 5 indicators, with 0 meaning that a policy is not in place, and 5 indicating that the policy is in place at the national level. The exception to this is for mandates, where a score of 2.5 is possible if such policies are in place at the subnational level. The number of countries with renewable energy targets has expanded dramatically during the past several years. This map shows countries that have either solar thermal or renewable thermal targets. For the purposes of the market readiness assessment, there must be a quantitative target specific to solar water heating, or a renewable thermal target including solar water heating that is formally adopted by the government. India's target to install 20 million square meters of solar water heating by 2022 is an example of such a target. Financial and fiscal incentives for solar water heating, such as grants and tax credits, are designed to improve the economic performance of solar water heating systems. For the purposes of the market readiness assessment, incentives are defined as direct cash payments like rebates, subsidies, or performance-based payments, or tax incentives such as tax credits and income tax deductions. We do not include exemptions for value-added taxes or import taxes, as interviews with industry and policy experts have shown that tax exemptions do not have as much impact as direct tax incentives like credits or deductions. Government-supported loan programs can be designed to reduce the cost of capital, as well as to expand the access to and availability of capital for solar water heating systems. Examples include low-interest loan programs, interest rate buy-down programs, and loan loss reserves. Building mandates require solar water heating, or renewable heating systems more broadly, to be integrated into new construction or major renovations of buildings. As noted previously, a score of 2.5 is possible if solar mandates are in place at the subnational level to reflect the growing number of cities and regions that have enacted them independently or in response to urging from the national government. The map on this page includes examples of both national and subnational mandates. Government-led or supported campaigns to raise awareness about solar water heating are an important complement to policy and regulations. While many countries have public outreach campaigns for energy efficiency and renewable energy that include solar water heating, only campaigns that specifically target solar water heating should receive a score of 5. Lebanon's innovative and government-supported outreach campaign stands out as an example of a program that would receive a 5 under the market readiness assessment. There are many resources for conducting research on policies and programs. A quick and powerful research tool is the solarthermalworld.org website. which has thousands of articles and documents on solar water heating organized in a quickly searchable fashion by country, market sector, policy type, and date. As an example of how this site can be used, go to solarthermalworld.org and select the filter option. You can then narrow your search by region, key pillar, market sector, and news type. The key pillars correspond closely to the indicators utilized in the Techscope methodology. Click on Policy. You will see policy articles appear, and will also notice that there is now a subfilter possibility for obligations. If you click on that, you will get just articles on obligations, which is another term for building mandates. You will now see that you can further refine the obligation articles by sector. You can also click on any of the other filters to further refine the pillar list by region, market sector, and more. In this example, we have used the filters to list all policy obligations related to domestic hot water. You can see that we can use additional filters to narrow the results down by region. In this case, there are several articles on obligations in most regions of the world. Solar Thermal World also provides a database of over 40 incentive and loan programs from around the world updated on a regular basis. This database can be accessed from the rotating banner underneath the Highlights button on the right column of the page, or can be accessed directly through www.solarthermalworld.org/incentive. Entries in this database provide detailed information on the incentive policy, including the incentive or loan type and size, eligible technologies, and the government body tasked with implementing the policy. Additional research on national government websites and interviews with government officials or industry representatives may be necessary to obtain all available information. Parameter 2 focuses on the national conditions for solar water heating market development. This parameter has a weight of 30%, the highest overall weight of all four parameters, in part because it contains the highest number of indicators. The parameter is composed of 6 indicators: insolation, solar water heating market penetration, residential energy consumption growth, solar water heating market growth, the payback period of a typical residential solar water heating system, and whether heating fuel subsidies are in place. Unlike parameter 1, each of the indicators in parameter 2 has a distinct scoring system which will be described in detail. The first indicator is incoming solar radiation, also known as insolation. Insolation is the primary determinant for how much energy a solar water heating system will capture and produce. The amount of insolation varies widely from country to country, and insolation can also vary within countries themselves. The Market Readiness Assessment uses the national average insolation for scoring purposes. Average insolation can be found on the Clean Energy Solutions Center Global Renewable Energy Opportunity Tool by clicking on Climate and Solar Resources in the left-hand column and then clicking on Country-Level Average Annual Solar Resource. Individual countries can then be clicked on the map to get average insolation. The Market Readiness Assessment scores average insolation on a 9-tier scale, with the upper and lower bounds corresponding to the lowest and highest average insolation recorded in inhabited countries. These tiers are then automatically converted to a 5-point scale, which is used as the score for this indicator. This conversion is automatically calculated by the Techscope analysis tool, which is covered in the subsequent webinar module. Solar water heating penetration refers to the amount of solar water heating systems that have been installed in a country per capita. Countries with higher penetration levels are likely to have well-established industries with functional sales channels and service providers. Solar thermal market data is typically expressed in either megawatts of thermal energy capacity or in terms of square meters of collector area. While the readiness assessment uses megawatts, an official conversion rate between these two measures of 0.7 kilowatt thermal per square meter of collector area has been adopted by the International Energy Agency. To calculate the score, data on population and current installed capacity must be gathered. The per capita rankings are drawn from the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program annual publication, Solar Heat Worldwide, Markets and Contribution to the Energy Supply. Not every country is listed in the IEA publication, however, and national data on current installed capacity will have to be gathered from other sources. Once this data is gathered, the megawatt per capita calculation is compared to a benchmark of global per capita rankings of major markets. The upper end of the index is set to the rate achieved by Greece, which has been defined as a mature but unsaturated market. Markets with higher penetrations, such as Austria and Cyprus, are considered to have begun to reach saturation and slower market growth. Each country's megawatt per capita score is situated along the spectrum of the global per capita ranking and automatically converted into a score on a 5-point scale by the Techscope analysis tool. Residential energy consumption growth can be viewed as a negative from a carbon mitigation perspective. From a market readiness perspective, however, expanding energy consumption can indicate a growing market that can be addressed by solar water heating. The International Energy Agency's statistics on residential energy consumption were selected as the basis for the indicator, since solar water heating market growth is heavily concentrated in the residential market. This screenshot shows 1 year of IEA energy consumption data for Chile. To calculate the score, average energy consumption for the most recent 5-year period is calculated and compared to international average growth, which has been estimated at 1.25% worldwide, with higher growth in non-OECD countries and low or negative growth in OECD countries. Residential energy consumption growth rates of 0% or below is scored as a 0. Consumption growth between 0 and 2.5% is adjusted to a score on a 5-point scale. Consumption growth above 2.5% is also scored as a 5. Solar water heating market growth is important for benchmarking the speed and state of market development. The Market Readiness Assessment develops a score that compares national market growth over a 5-year period with the recent global average annual market growth of approximately 15%. For example, Albania has experienced 5-year average annual growth of 16% and would therefore score a 5, as can be seen in the table. Annual solar market data for some countries is tracked by IEA Solar Heating and Cooling, but for many countries it will be necessary to find market data from national statistics agencies, industry sources, or even through market surveys. Even if a country has not created a strong enabling environment for solar water heating through policy, regulation, and outreach, it may still be possible for there to be strong solar water heating market growth if the economics are compelling. For example, if the cost of water heating fuel is high, homeowners may be able to recoup the cost of their systems in only a few years. This indicator is based on a simple payback period for a typical solar water heating installation. At the same time, it is recognized that there is a wide range of variables that can drive whether solar water heating is competitive, such as the type of fuel displaced, the type and cost of system installed, any incentives offered, and the cost of financing a system. As a result, this indicator has greater room for interpretation than other indicators do, with wide scoring tiers to account for ranges of possible payback periods. As a starting point, analysts may assume that solar water heating competes against the retail price of the predominant heating fuel. Where data on the specific heating fuel is not available, using the retail price of the predominant energy fuel used at the residential level could be a useful proxy. The Market Readiness Assessment report assumes that users will use RET-Screen software suite to calculate payback. RET-Screen is a free renewable energy analysis tool created by the Canadian government that can be used to calculate solar water heating paybacks internationally. The payback generated by RET-Screen is then scored based on a tiered system, as can be seen in this table. Systems with under 2-year payback score a 5, whereas a score of over 12 years receives a score of 0. The final indicator in parameter 2 is whether there are heating fuel subsidies. The presence of subsidies can suppress the price of energy and therefore make solar water heating less cost competitive with conventional fuels. Government subsidies can come in a variety of forms and can be directed to both energy producers and consumers. If heating fuel prices are subsidized, and therefore artificially low, then the score is 0. If there are no subsidies, then the score is 5. The third parameter focuses on financing issues. The availability and cost of financing are important drivers for solar water heating development given the upfront cost of solar systems. Parameter 3 is 20% of the total market readiness assessment score and is comprised of only 2 indicators: country credit rating and access to finance. Credit ratings are an evaluation of the creditworthiness of an entity, such as a government or corporation. The credit rating, which is assigned by credit rating agencies, reflects the ability of the entity to pay back debt and the likelihood that a loan will be defaulted on. Countries with lower scores may face restricted capital flows, which may constrain the ability of domestic banks to make loans. This table provides a summary of the different credit ratings issued by Standard & Poor's, S&P, and Moody's, as well as their scoring. There are a number of online resources where national credit ratings can be looked up. The Techscope tool uses tradingeconomics.com as an example. To calculate a score, a tiering approach is used whereby either Moody's or S&P's can be selected. Each country receives a score of 0 to 5 based on the credit rating, with higher credit ratings receiving higher scores. The access to finance score is actually a composite of 2 sub-indicators, one that addresses the availability of loans and one that addresses the cost of financing. Scores for each of these sub-indicators are calculated and then averaged out to create the final indicator score. We will start with the availability of loans. Availability of loans is scored based on the domestic credit provided by the banking sector within a country as a percentage of gross domestic product. This data is developed and maintained by the World Bank as part of its development indicators and can be found on the website pictured here. The Techscope assessment assumes that, as domestic credit provided by the banking sector as a percentage of gross domestic product increases, so too does the availability of domestic loans. In order to score domestic credit, the last 3 years of data should be averaged before being located on the table pictured here. The cost of financing is related to the availability of loans and is also determined using data from the World Bank development indicators, specifically the real interest rate, which adjusts nominal loan rates by the GDP deflator. The values in this dataset are a reasonable proxy for real pricing of loans in local terms. Just as with the domestic credit indicator, the most recent 3 years of data should also be averaged. This average value is then scored according to this table. Finally, the scores from the 2 sub-indicators are averaged to form a single score for access to finance. This table uses an example from Lebanon drawn directly from the Market Readiness Report. As can be seen here, the domestic credit score was 5 and the real interest score was 4. These 2 are averaged to create a final indicator score of 4.5. The fourth and final parameter focuses on the national business climate. It has 5 indicators relating to the ease of doing business, the availability of manufacturing capacity, standards and certifications for solar water heating equipment, certifications for solar water heating installers, and the existence of organized industry associations. A country's global rank from the World Bank and International Finance Corporation's Doing Business Index is used as the basis for scoring the ease of doing business. The Doing Business Index evaluates the systems in place to protect investors, enforce contracts, pay taxes, trade across borders, and more. The country's rank is transposed from the 189 country scale to a percentile score between 0 corresponding to the worst and 100 corresponding to the best. To generate a Techscope score, the percentile is then ranked on a 5-tiered scale ranging from a score of 1 to 5. A strong and healthy manufacturing sector is important for the growth of national solar water heating markets. Even if a country does not manufacture solar collectors, domestic manufacturers can still play a role in manufacturing components such as storage tanks and in system assembly. Manufacturing capability is evaluated using data for manufacturing value added as a percentage of GDP, or MVA. MVA statistics are maintained by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and are readily searchable online, as seen below in the profile for Albania. The global average MVA is 17%. The Market Readiness Assessment uses the global average as an upper bound and assumes that if a country's MVA is above the average, the country likely has a considerable manufacturing sector that could be mobilized to produce solar water heating systems. If a country's MVA is below the world's average, it could indicate that the sector is less competitively positioned to manufacture solar water heating systems or components. Standards and certifications can help ensure solar system performance, durability, reliability, and safety, and can support consumer confidence in solar water heating technology. A wide range of national and international solar water heating standards have been developed for solar collectors and systems. These include the Solar Key Mark in Europe and the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation system in the US. These standards primarily specify how solar thermal systems should be tested, for example, for thermal performance, impact resistance, rain penetration, and more. In order to support solar thermal standards, countries may introduce domestic testing facilities to ensure that local manufacturers can meet national standards. In addition, countries may introduce certification bodies to create and issue product quality labels. This map shows the countries that have developed standards for both solar water heating collectors and full solar water heating systems, as well as the countries that have standards just for collectors. This indicator is scored using a tiered system that attempts to recognize the building blocks of a functional standards and certification system without being overly prescriptive. The score for each tier is predicated on the previous tiers also being fulfilled. As can be seen in the table, a score of 3 indicates that a country has a national standards entity, solar water heating equipment standards, and solar water heating testing facilities. The introduction of a solar water heating product certification will earn a score of 4 or 5 depending on whether it is a unique national system or part of a broader international system. In addition to product certification and licensing schemes can also be developed for solar installers in order to ensure installation quality. For installer certification, a binary approach is used. A country receives a score of 0 if there is no installer certification scheme in place, and a 5 if there is a certification system for either individual installers or for installation companies. The final indicator relates to industry associations. The presence of a solar thermal industry association can provide an industry voice in the policy and political arena and can promote industry coordination and knowledge exchange. A binary score is used for this indicator. Countries without an industry association receive a 0. Countries with an active industry association that specifically supports solar water heating receive a 5. For the purposes of this analysis, an active industry association is defined as one that represents a significant share of the solar thermal industry and is pursuing industry-defined objectives such as policy lobbying, capacity building, and/or training. This concludes Module 2 of the Techscope Market Readiness Assessment online tutorial. In the next and final module, the theories explained in this document will be demonstrated using the companion Techscope Market Assessment tool to score a specific country.